I signed the papers on a Tuesday morning and drove to the coast alone, buying nothing but silence. Then my phone rang. It was my sister. She didn't ask for directions. She just announced she would arrive in 2 hours with 12 friends, demanding the master suite. I simply said, "Okay." I needed her to arrive at the perfect time to finally hear the word no from the only thing she could not bully: the law. My name is Amanda Price, and the ink was barely dry on the deed when I realized that silence is the most expensive luxury in the world. I had spent the last hour in a sterile title company office, signing my name over and over until my hand cramped, finalizing the purchase of a property that was supposed to be a secret. It was a 4-bedroom contemporary build in Harborcrest Dunes, a coastal community so strictly regulated that the Homeowners Association probably had opinions on the direction the seagulls were allowed to fly. I drove there alone. That was the point. The car smelled of leather and stale coffee, but the air rushing through the vents tasted like salt and freedom, for the first time in 46 years. I was driving toward a destination that did not belong to my husband, my parents, or my sister. It belonged to the bank and to me, but mostly, it belonged to the quiet. Harborcrest Dunes was not the kind of beach town where people dragged plastic coolers across the asphalt or blasted music from open Jeep windows. It was a fortress of beige stucco and manicured seagrass. The security guard at the gate had checked my ID against 3 different lists before raising the arm, and as I drove through the pristine streets, I noticed that every trash can was hidden, every lawn was measured to the millimeter, and every window was spotless. It was a neighborhood that valued reporting violations more than waving at neighbors. It was perfect. It was exactly what I needed after a lifetime of chaos. My family had always treated my existence as a communal resource. My time was their time. My emotional bandwidth was their therapy. And my money, ever since I had climbed the corporate ladder at Stonebridge Integrity Group, was their emergency fund. I was the reliable one, the one who fixed things, the one who absorbed the shock so everyone else could ride smoothly. Buying this house was an act of rebellion. But it was a rebellion of retreat, not aggression. I just wanted a place where the phone did not ring with a crisis I was expected to solve. I pulled into the driveway. The house was beautiful, sharp angles and glass facing the gray Atlantic, but I did not feel a rush of joy. I felt the heavy, lung-expanding relief of a diver breaking the surface. I turned off the engine and sat there for a long moment, listening to the ticking of the cooling motor. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was a text from my husband. "Marcus, let me know when you get there." It was a polite text. A dutiful text, but staring at the screen, I felt the vast, cold distance between us. Marcus and I had not had a real fight in years. But silence can be a form of erosion. We were 2 continents drifting apart on tectonic plates of unspoken resentments. He knew I was coming here to inspect the property, but he had not offered to come. He had not asked if I needed help moving boxes. He had stayed back in the city, ostensibly to work, but I suspected he was just relieved to have the house to himself. I typed back a single word. Arrived. I got out of the car. Breathing in the brine, I walked up the steps, keyed the code into the smart lock, and pushed the door open. The interior smelled of fresh paint and cedar. The furniture I had ordered was already arranged minimalist, white, untouched. I stood in the center of the living room, looking out at the dunes through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The ocean was churning, gray and violent, mirroring the knot in my stomach that was slowly beginning to unravel. Then the phone rang. I did not need to look at the screen to know who it was. The ringtone seemed to shrill with a specific frequency that drilled right into my molars. I looked anyway. The name flashed on the screen like an old bruise that never quite healed. Sloane, my sister. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but Sloane did not believe in voicemail. If I did not answer, she would call Marcus. If Marcus did not answer, she would call my office. She was a force of nature, destructive and relentless. I pressed the green button and held the phone to my ear, saying nothing. Amanda. Her voice was a sonic boom. She did not say hello. She did not ask how I was. She was laughing. The sound sharp and bright, the kind of laugh that usually preceded a disaster for someone else. Oh my God. You are finally there. I tracked your location. Listen, don't unpack too much. I stood still, watching a seagull struggle against the wind outside. Why? I asked. My voice sounded rusty. Because I am 2 hours away, Sloane announced. She said it with the confidence of a head of state declaring a national holiday. I have the whole crew with me, 12 of us. We decided to christen the new place properly. You know, break it in before you turn into a hermit. My grip tightened on the phone. Sloane, I said, I just walked in the door. I know perfect timing. We will be there by 4. Listen, I need you to prep the master suite for me, the big one facing the water. I saw the listing photos, so I know which one it is. Don't try to hide it. The master suite, I repeated. Yes, and obviously, I need the other rooms for the girls. The guys can crash on the couches or whatever. They don't care. But make sure the sheets are fresh. Oh, and do you have wine? We are stopping for supplies. But you know how I like that specific Sancerre. If you don't have it, run out and get a case. I don't want to look cheap in front of the crew. I closed my eyes. It was happening again. The assumption, the bulldozer. Sloane was 42 years old. But she lived her life like a teenager with a parent's credit card. She curated her life for an audience of strangers on the internet. And I was just a stagehand. She assumed the house was hers because I was her sister, and what was mine was hers. She did not ask if I was tired. She did not ask if I wanted company. She invited 12 strangers to my sanctuary before I had even taken off my coat. Sloane, I said, keeping my voice flat. I came here to be alone. Don't be dramatic, she snapped, her tone shifting instantly from bubbly to bullying. We are doing you a favor. That house is too big for one person. It's sad. Besides, I already posted that we are coming. Everyone is excited. Don't embarrass me. Amanda, I promised them a beach weekend. We are filming content for the brand. The brand, I said. Sloane's brand was a chaotic mix of lifestyle advice and drama, fueled by filters and audacity. Yes, the brand. 2 hours, master suite, clean sheets, alcohol. Don't be weird. She paused, waiting for me to fight back. She thrived on the push and pull. She wanted me to argue so she could steamroll me, so she could call me selfish, so she could complain to our mother that Amanda was being difficult again. I looked around the pristine living room. I saw the white linen sofa. I saw the polished hardwood floors. I saw the reflection of the clouds moving across the glass table. If I said no, she would come anyway. She would bang on the door. She would make a scene. She would film herself crying on my porch about her heartless sister. She would call Marcus and he would tell me to just let them in to keep the peace. That was the script. We had performed it 100 times. But this house was not in the city. This house was in Harbor Crest Dunes. I remembered the packet of documents sitting on the kitchen island, the thick binder with the gold logo of the Homeowners Association. I remembered the 30-page rulebook I had to initial before closing. I remembered the section on occupancy limits. I remembered the strict prohibition on commercial filming. I remembered the guest registration policy. A cold, hard clarity settled over me. It was a sensation I had not felt in years. It was the absence of anger. Okay, I said. The word hung in the air. Sloane paused. She had been ready for a fight, and my surrender threw her off balance for a fraction of a second. Then she laughed, a triumphant, grating sound. Good. See, was that so hard? Be a good sister. We will see you at 4. She hung up. I lowered the phone and looked at the black screen. She thought she had won. She thought, okay meant I was going to strip the beds and run to the liquor store. She thought, okay meant I was submitting to her will. Just like I had when we were children. Just like I had when paid off her credit card debt last year. She was wrong. I said okay, because I wanted her to come. I wanted her to drive 2 hours. I wanted her to pull up to the gate with 12 people. I wanted her to unload her cameras and her ego. I wanted her to arrive at the exact moment she would face something she had never faced in her entire life. She could bully me. She could bully our parents. She could even bully Marcus, but she could not bully a deed restriction. She could not gaslight a zoning ordinance. She could not guilt-trip a contract. For the first time in my life, I was not going to be the bad guy. I was going to be the bystander. I placed my phone on the marble countertop. The house was silent again. But the quality of the silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was pregnant with anticipation. I walked over to the kitchen island and picked up the heavy binder the title agent had given me. Harborcrest Dunes Community Association, Rules and Regulations. I opened it. I did not look at the view. I did not admire the backsplash. I did not check the water pressure. Instead, I flipped to the section on guest policies and noise ordinances. I ran my finger down the page, finding the paragraph I needed. Maximum occupancy for overnight guests is strictly limited to 2 persons per bedroom, not to exceed 8 persons total per dwelling unit. Commercial photography and videography are prohibited in all residential areas without a permit approved 14 days in advance. Unregistered guests are not permitted entry through the main gate. I read the words like a general reading a map of the terrain. My sister was bringing 12 people. She was bringing a film crew. She had not registered anyone. I took a deep breath, and for the first time that day, I smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was a sharp, thin thing. I was not preparing a home. I was preparing a dossier. I walked to the sliding glass door and locked it. Then I engaged the secondary security bolt. I went to the front door and checked the smart lock panel. I pulled up the app on my phone and verified the administrative privileges. I was the only admin. I returned to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. It was empty. I did not go to the store. I did not make the beds. I did not get the wine. Instead, I sat down at the island, opened the binder flat, and began to read every single line of the bylaws. I checked the definitions of nuisance. I checked the towing policy. I checked the fines. The sun began to dip lower, casting long, sharp shadows across the floor. The light turned orange and then bruised purple. I sat in the gathering dark, waiting. Let them come. Let them bring their noise and their entitlement. Let them bring their cameras. They were driving toward a beach house, but they were about to crash into a wall of paper, and for the first time, I was not going to be the one to cushion the impact. The binder was 3 inches thick and weighed as much as a brick, which was appropriate because I was about to use it to build a wall. I sat at the kitchen island, the quartz cool against my forearms, and turned the pages with the rhythmic snap of heavy paper. The house was silent, but my mind was louder than it had been in years. Humming with the precise, high-frequency vibration of a machine finally running at full capacity, I scanned the preamble of the Harborcrest Dunes Homeowners Association bylaws. In any other context, this document would have been a suffocating list of suburban neuroses. It regulated the shade of white you could paint your trim, the height of your grass to the 1/4 inch, and the specific days you were allowed to put out recycling. But today, these were not restrictions. They were ammunition. I ran my finger down the section titled Article 4 Use of Property. I found the paragraph on parking first. Driveways in Harborcrest were designed for aesthetic minimalism, not utility. The rule was explicit. No parking on the street between the hours of midnight and 6 in the morning. Violators would be booted at the owner's expense immediately. There was no grace period. Sloane was bringing a convoy. She had mentioned a van and her coupe. There was physically no space in my driveway for 3 cars, let alone the fleet required for 12 people. I turned the page. Noise ordinances. Quiet hours began at 10 at night. The decibel limit was low enough that a spirited game of charades would probably trigger a citation, but the gold mine was on page 42. Occupancy limits and short-term rentals. The text was bold and underlined, likely because the residents here were tired of people treating their investments like frat houses. It read that the maximum number of overnight guests for a single-family dwelling of this square footage was strictly limited to 6 persons, regardless of the number of bedrooms. Exceptions required a variance filed 30 days in advance with the board. 6 people. Sloan was bringing 12. She was already in violation of the bylaws before her tires even hit the pavement of the county line. I did not feel a thrill of malicious joy. What I felt was the cold satisfaction of a surgeon identifying the exact location for the incision. I reached for my phone, but not to text my sister. I dialed the number listed on the inside cover of the binder for Cedar Line Community Services. The phone rang twice. A voice answered, crisp and devoid of warmth. Cedar Line Community Services, Harbor Crest Division. This is Kendra Shaw. How may I assist you? My name is Amanda Price, I said. My voice was steady. I closed on the property at 44 Dune Grass Way this morning. Welcome to Harbor Crest. Ms. Price, we received the transfer notification from the title company an hour ago. Is there a problem with the access credentials? No, I said. I am calling to preempt a security breach. There was a pause on the line. Kendra Shaw did not ask what I meant. She did not ask if I was okay. She simply waited for data. I liked her immediately. I have reason to believe an unauthorized group of approximately 12 individuals is attempting to gain access to my property later this afternoon, I said. They are led by a woman named Sloan Mercer. They may claim to be family. They may claim to be guests. They are neither. I heard the clicking of a keyboard. Are they listed on your guest registry in the resident portal? Kendra asked. They are not, and they will not be. I see. Harbor Crest maintains a strict closed-gate policy. If they are not on the list, the guard at the gatehouse will turn them away. However, if they tailgate another resident or attempt to walk in, that becomes a trespassing issue. They will try to argue, I told her. Sloan is persuasive. She's bringing a camera crew. She intends to film on the premises. The typing stopped abruptly. Commercial filming is a violation of Article 7 without a permit and insurance bond, Kendra said, her tone sharpening. That elevates this to a liability issue for the association. Exactly, I said. I want to establish a paper trail immediately. What do you need from me to ensure they are removed if they manage to bypass the gate? I need a written statement of unauthorized access sent to this email address immediately, she said, reciting the address. Include your proof of ownership, though I have it here, and a specific statement denying entry to Ms. Mercer. Do not engage with them personally if you can avoid it. Let our security team handle the interface. That is what you pay your dues for. Understood, I said. And Ms. Price, Kendra added, if they make a scene, do not open your door. If you open the door, it becomes a civil dispute between family members. If you keep the door closed, it remains a security matter regarding intruders. Let the door be the boundary. The door stays closed, I promised. I hung up and immediately opened my email app. I drafted the message with the precision of a legal brief. I attached the photo of my closing documents. I attached a photo of the deed. In the body of the email, I wrote a single, unambiguous paragraph. I, Amanda Price, sole owner of the property at 44 Dune Grass Way, formally deny access to Sloan Mercer and any associates accompanying her. No individuals other than myself have permission to occupy or enter this residence. Any attempt by this group to enter the property is a hostile trespass. I request immediate removal by community security should they appear. I hit send. The digital receipt appeared on my screen. It was done. The mechanism was in motion. I stood up and walked to the panel for the smart home system mounted near the entryway. The previous owners had left the default codes, which was careless. But I was not going to be careless. I navigated to the lock settings. I wiped every existing user code. I deleted the guest code. I deleted the contractor code. I created a new master code, a random string of 6 digits that I memorized instantly. Then I created a temporary code labeled security and set it to expire in 24 hours. I wrote this code down on a sticky note, ready to hand to the officer if necessary, but I did not enter it into the keypad. My phone vibrated. A notification from the security app confirmed front door access codes updated. All previous tokens revoked. I went back to the kitchen and took my phone out again. I created a new folder in my gallery. I named it Harbor Crest Evidence. The name felt right. It acknowledged that this was not a vacation. It was an investigation. I opened my text thread with Sloane. I scrolled up to her last message, the one demanding the master suite. I took a screenshot. I saved it to the folder. Then a new message bubbled up on the screen. Sloane, just stopped for gas. The crew is hyped. We have the drone with us too for some aerial shots of the house. Don't be weird when we get there. Okay, we need good vibes for the video. I stared at the words, drone, aerial shots, another violation of the HOA privacy rules regarding airspace over neighbors' pools. She was digging her own grave with every text, and she didn't even know she was holding a shovel. I did not reply. I did not type, no. I did not type, don't come. Any response would give her something to argue with. Any response would give her a foothold to say there was a miscommunication. Silence was the only surface she could not grip. I took a screenshot of her text. I saved it to the evidence folder. Then I went to the settings for the doorbell camera. It was a high-definition model with a wide-angle lens. I adjusted the sensitivity to the highest setting. I set the recording loop to continuous, rather than motion only. I wanted the dead air. I wanted the silence before the storm. I wanted proof that the house was peaceful until the exact second she arrived to ruin it. I walked to the sliding glass door at the back of the house. It faced the dunes and the ocean, a vulnerable point of entry if someone decided to hop the low fence. I found a spare contact sensor in the utility drawer left over from the installation kit and adhered it to the frame of the slider. I synced it to the hub. Now, if anyone tried to jiggle that door, the system would scream, and my phone would log the attempt. I returned to the kitchen island. The light outside was shifting, the sharp afternoon sun softening into a golden haze, but inside, the atmosphere was clinical. I began to arrange the physical evidence. I took the HOA binder and opened it to the page with the occupancy limits. I used a yellow highlighter I found in my purse to mark the line about the 6-person maximum. I highlighted the ban on commercial filming. I highlighted the noise ordinance. I placed the binder in the center of the counter. Next to it, I placed my phone, screen up. Next to that, I placed a notepad where I had written down the direct dispatch number for the community patrol and the case number Kendra had generated for my email. It looked like a command center. It looked like the desk of a prosecutor preparing for an arraignment. I stood back and surveyed the scene. The house was locked. The codes were changed. The authorities were notified. The evidence was preserved. I realized my heart rate had slowed down. My hands were not shaking. For years, every time Sloane called, my body had flooded with cortisol, the chemical of fight or flight. I had always chosen flight. I had fled into compliance. I had fled into check writing. But today, standing in the cool, climate-controlled air of my own house, I felt a strange, icy calm. It was the feeling of the scalpel before the first cut. I poured myself a glass of tap water and drank it standing up. I was not a sister anymore. I was a witness, and the defendants were 20 miles away and closing in at 70 miles per hour. I checked the time. They would be at the gate in less than 40 minutes. I walked to the living room window and slightly angled the blinds so I could see the street without being seen. I was ready. The wall was built. Now I just had to wait for them to crash into it. The invasion arrived with the subtlety of a military parade. It was exactly 4 o'clock. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the dunes in shades of copper and gold, when the silence of Dune Grassway was shattered by the sound of engines. I stood perfectly still behind the sheer curtain of the living room window. My body pressed into the shadows, watching the spectacle unfold on the driveway I had swept clean only hours before. Sloane led the charge. She was driving her white coupe, a car she couldn't afford but leased to maintain appearances. She swung it into the driveway with an aggressive arc, parking diagonally across the concrete pavers, as if she were claiming territory. Behind her, a black rental SUV pulled up, followed closely by a gray cargo van that looked entirely out of place in this neighborhood of manicured hedges and silent Teslas. Doors flew open. The noise was instantaneous. It wasn't just voices. It was a cacophony of entitlement. I watched as 12 people spilled out onto my property. They didn't look like guests arriving at a home. They looked like a production crew arriving on a location scout. There were suitcases, hard-shell equipment cases, and oversized red coolers that looked heavy with ice and cheap beer. 2 men in skinny jeans began unloading tripods and large ring lights from the back of the van. Another was assembling what looked like a camera stabilizer rig. They moved with a presumption that made my stomach turn. They were already walking on the grass. One girl was taking a selfie against my front door before she had even knocked. They were treating my sanctuary like a backdrop. Sloane emerged from the coupe like a queen descending to accept tribute. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, holding her phone up at arm's length, already recording. I could see her mouth moving. The practiced smile plastered on her face, narrating her arrival to her invisible audience. She looked radiant, chaotic, and completely oblivious to the fact that she was walking into a trap. She marched up the front steps, her heels clicking loudly on the stone. The entourage followed loosely behind her, dragging their luggage and equipment, a chaotic stream of color and noise invading the monochrome elegance of the house's exterior. Sloane reached the front door. I held my breath. She didn't knock. She reached for the handle and pulled, expecting it to give way. It didn't. She pulled again, harder this time, a frown flickering across her face. The smart lock held firm. The deadbolt was engaged. The house was rejecting her. She paused, confused. She tried the handle a third time, rattling it with impatience, as if the house simply hadn't recognized her importance. Then she leaned in and pressed the doorbell. Ding-dong. The sound echoed through the empty hallway. I didn't move. I kept my arms at my sides, my breathing shallow and controlled. I watched her through the gap in the curtains. "Amanda," she called out, her voice muffled by the double-paned glass but still sharp. "We're here. Open up. The code isn't working." She waited. The silence from the house was absolute. Behind her, the group was starting to pile up on the porch and the driveway. The guys with the tripods set them down on the walkway. Blocking the path, someone cracked open a soda can with a loud hiss. Sloane's smile began to falter. The script wasn't being followed. I was supposed to be at the door, flustered but welcoming, handing out drinks and taking their bags. I was supposed to be the prop in her scene. My absence was a glitch in her programming. She hammered on the door with the side of her fist. "Amanda. Seriously, I have 12 people out here. It's hot. Open the door." That was the cue. A white patrol vehicle, silent and electric, glided up to the curb, blocking the driveway exit. It was marked Harbor Crest Security in discreet silver lettering. A man stepped out. It wasn't a random guard. It was Luis Rojas. I recognized him from the website, the head of community compliance. He wasn't wearing a uniform that looked like a costume. He wore a crisp gray polo and tactical pants, and he carried a clipboard not as an accessory, but as a weapon. The chatter on the lawn died down instantly. The group sensed the shift in the atmosphere. They were used to bouncers they could flirt with or managers they could yell at. Rojas looked like neither. He looked like a man who enjoyed paperwork. Sloane spun around. Her phone still held high. She saw the uniform and her instinct to perform kicked in immediately. She flashed a dazzling fake smile and aimed the camera at him. "Oh, look," she announced to her live stream, her voice pitched high and bright. "We even have a welcome committee. We are just surprising my sister. She's probably in the shower. We're going to have the best weekend." Rojas didn't smile. He didn't look at the phone. He walked up the driveway with a steady, measured pace, stopping exactly 3 feet from where Sloane stood on the bottom step. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was calm, carrying effortlessly over the wind. "I need you to stop recording." "Oh, it's fine. We're influencers," Sloane said, waving her hand dismissively. "My sister owns this place, Amanda Price. We're family." "I know who owns the property," Rojas said. He looked down at his clipboard, then back up at her. "And I have a direct order from the homeowner regarding access." Sloane laughed. A nervous, jagged sound. "Right. She's expecting us. She's just being dramatic. Amanda, Get out here. Rojas pulled a sheet of paper from his clipboard. It was a cream-colored document with a red header. I recognized it. It was a notice of violation coupled with a no trespass directive. Ms. Mercer, Rojas said, reading her name from the paper without asking for it. The homeowner has formally notified Cedarline Security that no guests are authorized for this property today. Furthermore, you are in violation of Article 7 regarding commercial filming and Article 4 regarding occupancy limits. This is a private residence, not a rental venue. The group on the lawn went silent. The guys with the tripods exchanged glances. They were hired hands, probably promised exposure or a small fee. They didn't sign up for a legal confrontation. What? Sloane lowered her phone slightly, the mask slipping. That's ridiculous. I'm her sister. She said yes. She literally said okay on the phone 2 hours ago. The homeowner has provided a written affidavit stating that access is denied to you and your party, Rojas continued. Ignoring her protest, he extended the paper toward her. You are trespassing. You need to remove your vehicles and your equipment from the property immediately. Sloane stared at the paper as if it were radioactive. She didn't take it. Her face flushed a deep, blotchy red. I'm not trespassing. This is my family's house, Amanda. Stop hiding. She turned back to the door and pounded on it with both fists. Amanda, come out here and tell this guy he's an idiot. This is embarrassing. You're embarrassing me. The friends were backing away now. One of the girls whispered something to the driver of the van, and he started moving back toward the driver's seat. They knew the smell of trouble. They knew that sister and trespassing in the same sentence meant police were next. We should probably go. Sloane, one of the guys muttered. We can't film if we get kicked out. Shut up, Sloane snapped, spinning on her heel. She looked wild now, her hair whipping in the wind. Nobody is leaving. She's just doing this to be a bitch. She's jealous. She always does this. She turned back to Rojas, pointing a manicured finger at his chest. You can't kick us out. We have rights. We drove 2 hours. She invited us. If you do not vacate the premises in 5 minutes, Rojas said, checking his watch, I will call the county sheriff to assist with a criminal trespass removal, and I will be issuing a citation for the noise disturbance and the unauthorized commercial equipment. The fine starts at $500 per person. The number hung in the air. $500 per person. The crew evaporated. It was almost impressive how quickly they moved. The tripods were snatched up. The coolers were dragged back toward the van. The girl who had been taking selfies was already in the back seat of the SUV, slamming the door. Sloane stood alone on the porch. Her kingdom had deserted her. She looked at the retreating backs of her friends, then at the impassive face of Rojas, and finally, she turned her gaze to the house. She knew I was in there. She knew I was watching. She walked right up to the living room window. She pressed her face close to the glass, shielding her eyes with her hands to see through the glare. I didn't move. I stood there, a dark shape in the dim room, staring right back at her. Amanda, she hissed. Her voice vibrated through the glass. I can see you. Open the door, right now. Don't be weird. You're ruining everything. Marcus is going to kill you for this. She invoked his name like a spell. Marcus, the peacemaker, the enabler, the one who would have opened the door just to make the screaming stop. But Marcus wasn't here, and the glass between us was double-paned, impact-resistant storm glass. Sloane banged on the window with her open palm. I'm not leaving. You can't make me leave. I have nowhere to go with these people. Open the door. Rojas stepped onto the porch. Ma'am, step away from the window. That is your final warning. Sloane ignored him. She looked desperate, furious, and humiliated. She looked like a child who had been told no for the first time in 40 years and didn't have the emotional vocabulary to process it. Amanda. Get out here, she screamed. I looked at her. I saw the smear of makeup on her cheek. I saw the panic in her eyes. I saw the sister who had borrowed money she never paid back, who had mocked my job, who had flirted with my husband, who had turned every family holiday into a tribute to herself. I decided she deserved one thing. She deserved the truth. I unlocked the deadbolt. The sound was a loud, mechanical clack. Sloane's face lit up with triumph. She stepped back, smoothing her dress, ready to storm in and take control. "Finally," she muttered. "God, you are so—" I opened the door 6 inches, just enough to be seen. I kept the chain engaged, though I doubt she noticed. I didn't step out onto the porch. I stayed in the threshold, framed by the darkness of the hallway. The wind caught my hair. I looked past her to the camera crew huddled by the van, to the neighbors peering out from their windows across the street, and finally, I looked directly into the lens of the phone she was still clutching. "I didn't invite you," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the air like a lash. "I didn't agree to this. Leave." Sloane's mouth dropped open. "You said, okay. On the phone, you said, okay." "I said, okay," I replied, looking her dead in the eye. "I said it so you would come all this way. I said it so you would stand right here. I said it so you would finally hear the word no from someone you can't talk over." I pointed to Rojas. "He speaks for the property, and the property says get out." I closed the door. I threw the deadbolt, and then, for good measure, I engaged the secondary lock I had installed an hour ago. From outside, I heard a scream of pure, incoherent rage, but it was muffled. It was distant. It was the sound of a storm raging against a shelter that was built to withstand it. The door was closed, but the silence I had bought was already broken. Through the heavy wood, I could hear Sloane screaming. It wasn't the high-pitched shriek of a victim. It was the guttural roar of a predator that had just realized the cage door was locked. She was hammering on the frame now, a rhythmic, dull thudding that vibrated through the floorboards. I stood in the hallway, my hand hovering over the smart lock panel. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Sloane was no longer performing for her followers. The phone was in her pocket. She was performing for the neighbors, for the security guard, and for the 12 people standing awkwardly on my driveway with their suitcases and their shame. "I have a contract," she yelled, her voice cracking. "I have a signed agreement. You can't lock me out." This was new. I watched on the screen as she dug into her oversized designer tote bag. Her movements were frantic, scattering lip gloss and charging cables onto the porch pavers. Finally, she pulled out a document. It was folded into thirds, slightly crumpled. She whipped it open and shoved it toward Luis Rojas's chest. "Read it," she demanded. "My brother-in-law signed it. It says I have authorization to use the property as a family representative. I have tenancy rights." Rojas didn't flinch. He adjusted his glasses and took the paper from her shaking hand. He clicked a small flashlight on his belt, illuminating the document in the gathering dusk. The group of friends behind her shifted. They were exchanging looks. The fun beach weekend vibe had evaporated, replaced by the distinct, metallic taste of potential legal trouble. I saw one of the camera guys start to disassemble his rig, packing it away with quiet urgency. I saw blue lights flash against the living room wall. They were silent at first, just a rhythmic strobe of blue and red washing over the white interior of my house. The county sheriff had arrived. Rojas must have called them the moment Sloane refused to leave. Rojas looked up from the paper, then turned to the approaching deputy. He pointed at the paper, then at the door. I knew I had to step in, not to argue, but to drive the final nail. I unlocked the deadbolt. I didn't throw the door wide open. I cracked it, leaving the heavy security chain engaged. The gap was less than 4 inches, just enough to slice a strip of light across the porch, just enough to be heard, but not enough to be touched. Sloane lunged forward when she saw the movement, but stopped when she saw the chain taut against the wood. "You liar," she screamed, her face contorted in the gap. "You told them I was trespassing. Tell them you said yes." I looked past her, ignoring her completely. I locked eyes with the deputy who was walking up the path. He was a large man with a calm, bored expression, the look of a law enforcement officer who had seen every version of a domestic dispute and was impressed by none of them. His body camera was mounted on his chest, a blinking green eye in the twilight. "Officer," I said, My voice was low, clear, and steady. "I am the homeowner, Amanda Price." The deputy nodded. "Ma'am, we have a report of a disturbance and trespassing. This individual claims to have residency rights." "She does not," I said. Sloane slapped her hand against the doorframe. "I do. I have the paper, Marcus signed it. He's the husband that makes it community property." I looked at the group of friends huddled by the van. They were watching us with morbid fascination. "Did you tell them?" I asked Sloane, keeping my voice loud enough for the microphone on the deputy's chest to pick up. "That you demanded the master suite for yourself?" Sloane froze. "Did you tell them," I continued, "that you told me, the owner of the house, that I would be sleeping on the sofa in my own living room so you wouldn't lose face?" A murmur went through the group on the driveway. The girl who had been taking selfies earlier looked at Sloane with wide, horrified eyes. They were influencers and hangers-on, people who lived for optics. But even they understood the hierarchy of humiliation. Asking for a favor was one thing. Evicting the homeowner to the couch in her own house was a level of entitlement that made them look like accomplices to a bullying campaign. "That's not," Sloane stammered. "We were going to share. We were going to figure it out." "No," I said. "You said, 'Prepare the master for me.' You commanded it." I turned back to the deputy. "I did not invite them. I do not agree to their presence. I want them removed from my property." Sloane grabbed the paper from Rojas and thrust it at the deputy. "Look at this. It's a notarized authorization. It says, 'The Felton Price Family Trust grants Sloane Mercer full access.'" The deputy took the paper. He shined his flashlight on it. Rojas leaned in, pointing at the bottom of the page. "Officer," Rojas said, his tone shifting from administrative to accusatory, "look at the parcel identifier in the header." The deputy squinted. "That parcel number follows the format for the Inland District." Rojas explained. "Harbor Crest Dunes properties all start with the code HCD, followed by 6 digits. This code starts with WXL. That's the county seat code." Rojas flipped the page. "And the notary seal. Look at the county commission. It says Wexley County, but this notary's commission number expires in 2024. We are in 2026. And the stamp, it looks photocopied. The texture isn't raised." The air on the porch changed instantly. It went from a civil dispute to something colder, something that carried the weight of a felony. The deputy looked at Sloane. "Ma'am, where did you get this document?" Sloane's mouth opened and closed, for the first time all day. She was silent. She looked at the paper, then at me. Her confidence was crumbling like wet sand. She knew the paper wasn't real, or rather, she knew it wasn't right, but she had banked on the authority of the paper being enough to scare off a security guard. She hadn't counted on a compliance officer who memorized parcel codes for fun. "My brother-in-law sent it," she mumbled. "He handles the paperwork. Maybe he sent the wrong draft. It's presented as a legal document to force entry into a property," the deputy said. He folded the paper and slipped it into his vest pocket. "I'm going to need to hold on to this for verification." He turned to the group by the van. "Folks, unless you have a lease agreement with your name on it, you need to clear the area. The homeowner has revoked permission. If you remain, you will be cited for trespassing." The group didn't need to be told twice. The hesitation vanished. They began grabbing handles and throwing bags into the trunk of the van. The sound of zippers and slamming doors filled the air. They weren't Sloane's friends anymore. They were witnesses fleeing a crime scene. "Wait," Sloane yelled, turning toward them. "Guys, don't go. We can just go to a hotel. We can sort this out." "Sloane, you said this was cleared," the guy with the camera said, not looking at her. "You said it was your place. I'm not getting arrested for your drama." He got into the driver's seat of the van and started the engine. The SUV followed suit. Sloane stood alone on the porch. The wind whipped her dress around her legs. She looked small. She looked defeated. But beneath the defeat, I saw the flash of something vicious. "You need to leave, ma'am," the deputy said. "Now." Sloane stared at me through the 4-inch gap in the door. The blue lights washed over her face, making her look ghastly. "You think you won," she whispered. It was low, meant only for me. "I didn't play," I said. "I just followed the rules." She stepped off the porch, walking backward, refusing to break eye contact. She reached the bottom step and stopped. The deputy was shepherding her toward her white coupe, his hand hovering near her elbow but not touching her. Before she turned to get into her car, she paused. The mask of the victim dropped completely, replaced by a sneer of pure malice. She leaned forward, shouting over the distance between us. "You think this is over?" she yelled. "You think Marcus doesn't know about this? Who do you think gave me the code to the gate? Amanda. Who do you think gave me the paper?" The question hung in the night air. Colder than the ocean wind, I felt a physical blow to my chest, but I didn't blink. I didn't react. I kept my face blank, a porcelain mask of indifference. "Goodbye, Sloane," I said. I closed the door. I slid the chain back into place. I turned the deadbolt. I stood in the dark hallway, listening to the sound of her engine revving aggressively, tires screeching against the pavement as she peeled out of the driveway. I listened until the sound faded into the distance, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my own heart. Who do you think gave me the paper? I walked to the kitchen island. My hands were trembling now, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. I looked at the file I had started. Harborcrest evidence. I had won the battle for the beach house. Sloane was gone. The guests were gone. The silence had returned, but Sloane's parting shot had shattered the victory. It wasn't a random insult. It was a key that unlocked a door I had been terrified to open for years. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't text him to ask why. Asking him would only give him a chance to lie. Instead, I opened the calendar app. I set a reminder for 8 o'clock the next morning. Location: Wexley County Recorder of Deeds. If they wanted to use paper to hurt me, I would go to where the paper lived. I would go to the source, and I would find out exactly whose handwriting was on the knife they had stuck in my back. The Wexley County Administration Building was a monolith of beige concrete that smelled of floor wax and stale ambition. It was located 30 miles inland, far away from the salt spray and the dunes, in a town that consisted mostly of bail bond offices and lunch counters. I walked through the metal detector at 9 o'clock in the morning, my heels clicking on the linoleum with a sound that felt too loud for the hushed, library-like atmosphere of the lobby. I was not there to file a homestead exemption. I was not there to pay a tax bill. I was there because my sister's parting words had been echoing in my skull for 12 hours like a looped recording. Who do you think gave me the paper? I took a number from the red dispenser, number 42, and sat on a hard plastic bench. The room was illuminated by humming fluorescent tubes that cast a greenish pallor over everyone's skin. It was the kind of lighting that made everyone look guilty or sick. I felt a little of both. My stomach was a hollow knot, tightened by the knowledge that I was about to look for something I desperately did not want to find. When my number flashed on the overhead matrix, I walked to window 3. The clerk was a woman in her 50s with reading glasses perched on a chain around her neck and the weary, patient expression of someone who spent her days correcting other people's mistakes. Her name tag read Patricia. "Good morning," I said, sliding my driver's license and the deed reference number under the glass partition. "I am the owner of the property at 44 Dune Grass Way in Harborcrest. I closed yesterday. I need to review the index for any activity recorded against the parcel in the last 24 hours. Patricia took the paper, her movements slow and deliberate. "Just closed. You said usually takes a few days for the final deed to scan into the public view, but let me check the intake queue. Sometimes the e-recordings hit the system overnight." She typed on her keyboard. The sound was rhythmic, almost hypnotic. Clack, 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 enter. I watched her face. I was looking for a flicker. I was looking for the squint of confusion that meant something was wrong. For a long minute, there was nothing. Then, Patricia stopped typing. She leaned forward, adjusting her glasses. She tapped the screen with a fingernail, scrolled down, and then stopped again. She didn't look up immediately. She typed a few more commands, accessing a submenu, then she raised her eyes to meet mine. The boredom was gone from her face, replaced by a careful, bureaucratic neutrality. "Ma'am," she said, her voice dropping an octave, "did you authorize an amendment to the title late last night?" The question hit me like a splash of ice water. The air in the room seemed to vanish. "No," I said. It was a single syllable, punched out of my lungs. "I did not." Patricia nodded slowly, as if she had expected that answer. "I have a submission here in the pending batch. It came in through the electronic portal at 11:14 last night." 11:14. That was 3 hours after Sloane had peeled out of my driveway. That was while I was sitting in my kitchen, drinking tea, trying to stop my hands from shaking, while I was trying to convince myself I was safe. Someone was logging into a database and trying to sell the ground from under my feet. "What is it?" I asked. "What is the document?" "It is labeled as a correction of interest," Patricia said, turning the monitor slightly so I could see the edge of the display. "It references your deed. It attempts to reclassify the ownership structure from sole ownership to tenancy in common with a trust entity." I leaned in, pressing my forehead against the cool glass of the partition. I read the text on the screen. It was dry, legalistic, and terrifying. Grantee Felton Shoreline Trust. I felt the blood drain from my face. Felton, that was Marcus's last name. But we didn't have a trust. We had separate accounts. We had a prenuptial agreement that kept our assets distinct, or so I had always believed. "May I see the submitter information?" I asked. My voice sounded mechanical, distant, as if it were coming from a speaker in the ceiling. Patricia hesitated. "Technically, the metadata is administrative, but since you are the owner and you are claiming this is unauthorized..." She clicked a tab labeled Batch Header. A pop-up window appeared. It contained the digital fingerprint of the crime. Submitter ID 8842-Alpha. Organization M.F. Consulting Group, LLC. Contact email admin @marcusfeltonconsulting.net. IP, origin proxy server, masked, the world tilted on its axis, M.F. Consulting Group, It was the shell company Marcus used for his freelance crisis management work. It was the entity he used to bill clients who wanted to keep their payments discreet. It was the email address I saw pop up on his laptop screen in the evenings when he told me he was just clearing out some spam. Sloane hadn't forged the document on her phone. She hadn't downloaded a template from a legal website. She was too disorganized for that. She was a blunt instrument. Marcus was the architect. He had waited until the closing was finalized, until the money had left my account, until the deed was recorded in my name, and then, under the cover of night, while his wife was alone in the house she had bought to escape him, he had tried to slide a legal shim into the foundation. He wasn't trying to steal the house outright. He was trying to insert himself into the title so that I couldn't sell it, couldn't refinance it, and couldn't kick his sister-in-law out without his permission. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a coup. I stared at the email address, admin@marcusfeltonconsulting.net. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, The shock was so profound that it bypassed emotion entirely and went straight to survival instinct, I felt a cold, hard clarity settle over me, sharper than the day before. Yesterday, I was fighting a brat. Today, I was fighting a conspirator. "This is fraud," I said. I looked Patricia in the eye. "That submission is fraudulent. I did not sign it. I did not authorize it. The entity, Felton Shoreline Trust, does not exist to my knowledge. Or if it does, it has no claim to my property." Patricia nodded. She reached for a red folder on her desk. "Okay, we need to stop this before it finalizes. Once it is indexed, it becomes a cloud on the title, and you would have to go to court to remove it, since it is still in the pending queue. We can flag it." She slid a form under the glass. "This is a verified statement of false filing. You need to sign this under penalty of perjury. It essentially tells the county recorder that the pending document is a forgery or unauthorized." I took the pen. My hand was steady. I wrote my name. I wrote the parcel number. In the section for reason for objection, I wrote unauthorized submission by third party, attempting to alter ownership rights without consent, suspected identity theft and deed fraud. I want to go further, I said, pushing the paper back to her. I want to place a manual review flag on this parcel. Patricia raised her eyebrows. That will slow down everything. Ms. Price, if you want to refinance or sell later, a human being will have to review every single page before it clears. It takes weeks. I don't care if it takes years, I said. I want a lock on this property so tight that air cannot get in without a notary present. No e-recordings, no digital submissions. If a document comes in for 44 Dune Grass Way, I want it rejected unless I'm standing at this counter with my passport and a thumbprint. I can set the account to suspect status, Patricia said. It freezes the electronic portal for this parcel number. The submitter will get a rejection error saying, "Contact county clerk." Do it, I said. And Patricia? Yes. I need a certified printout of that batch header. I need the timestamp. I need the submitter email. I need the IP address log. I need everything that proves who sent that file. I can give you the transaction log, she said. It costs $1 per page. Print it, I said. She worked for 5 minutes. The printer whirred. I watched the pages slide into the tray. They were warm when she handed them to me. I held them like they were radioactive material. I paid the fee with cash. I didn't want a credit card transaction that Marcus might see. I realized with a jolt of nausea that I was already thinking like a fugitive. I was hiding receipts from my husband because my husband was trying to steal my house. Is there anything else? Patricia asked. She looked at me with genuine pity now. She understood. She had probably seen this 1,000 times, children stealing from parents, lovers stealing from each other. Paperwork is the quietest weapon in a domestic war. No, I said. Thank you. Patricia, you may have just saved my life. I walked out of the building. The automatic doors slid open, and the heat of the morning hit me. The sun was blindingly bright, reflecting off the rows of cars in the parking lot. It was a beautiful day. The sky was a perfect, innocent blue. I walked to my car and sat in the driver's seat. I locked the doors. I looked down at the papers in my lap. There it was. The timestamp. 11:14 p.m. The email admin at marcusfeltonconsulting.net. I thought about the phone call with Marcus yesterday. Let me know when you get there. He had sounded so distant. I had thought it was indifference. Now I knew it was focus. He wasn't distant because he didn't care. He was distant because he was calculating. He had sent Sloane to cause a scene. He knew she would create chaos. He knew I would be distracted. Fighting with her. Calling security. Dealing with the police. And while I was occupied with the noise, he had tried to slip through the back door of the internet. It was a pincer movement. Sloane was the infantry. Loud and disposable. Marcus was the general. Safe in his office. Moving pieces on a map. He didn't just want the house. He wanted control. He wanted to make sure that even when I bought my freedom, I was still leasing it from him. I placed the papers on the passenger seat. I started the car. I wasn't going back to the city. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. Confrontation is emotional. Confrontation is messy. Marcus liked paperwork. He liked rules. He liked legal strategies. Fine. I put the car in reverse. I pulled out of the parking spot. I had a new destination. I wasn't going home to cry. I was going to find the most ruthless real estate attorney in the tri-state area, if Marcus wanted to turn our marriage into a transaction. I was going to make sure he ended up with a deficit. I was going to audit him, and I was going to make sure that when the dust settled, the only thing he owned was his own regret. I sat in the front seat of my car, the engine idling, the air conditioning blasting against the sweat that had broken out on my forehead. I did not drive away immediately. I had one more call to make before I left the county complex parking lot. I dialed the number for the title insurance company. I didn't call the customer service line. I called the direct extension of the underwriter who had handled my closing 24 hours ago. "This is Amanda Price," I said when he answered. "Policy number 749-22 Bravo. I am declaring a title emergency. I have evidence of an attempted fraudulent recording against the property at 44 Dune Grass Way. I need a fraud alert placed on the policy immediately." The underwriter paused. "Ms. Price? Attempted by whom?" "By a third party claiming an unrecorded trust interest," I said, my voice clipping the words like a telegraph. "I have just filed a verified statement of false filing with the county clerk. I need you to flag the file. If any claim comes in, it is to be denied pending a quiet title action." "Understood," he said, the sleepiness gone from his voice. "We will flag it. Do you have legal representation?" "I am on my way to get it," I said. I hung up. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a conference room on the 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Wexley. The room smelled of lemon polish and expensive leather. Across the table from me sat Janelle Sutter. Janelle was not the kind of lawyer who offered you a tissue. She was the kind of lawyer who offered you a strategy. She was a woman of sharp angles, a sharp jawline, a sharp bob cut, and eyes that looked like they could scan a contract and find the loophole in 3 seconds flat. She didn't ask me how I was feeling. She didn't ask about the emotional toll of my sister's betrayal. She simply opened a fresh legal pad and clicked a silver pen. "Tell me the sequence," Janelle said. "Facts only, no speculation." I laid it out for her. I spoke with the precision of my training at Stonebridge Integrity Group. At Stonebridge, we audited corporate supply chains for fraud. We didn't deal in he said, she said. We dealt in timestamps and deliverables. "Tuesday, 2 o'clock, I began. "Closing finalized. Tuesday, 4 o'clock. Sloan Mercer calls, demands entry. Tuesday, 6 o'clock, I notify HOA and security. Tuesday, 6:30, Sloan arrives with 12 people. 6:45 police called. 7:15 Sloan produces a document claiming tenancy rights via Felton Price Family Trust. Police confiscate document. Sloan evicted, Wednesday, 9 a.m. I check county records. Pending submission found. Uploaded Tuesday, 11:14 p.m. Submitter uses email linked to my husband's consulting firm." Janelle wrote furiously, her pen scratching across the paper. She didn't look up until I finished. "You have the police report number?" "Yes." I slid the card the deputy had given me across the mahogany table. "And the printout from the county." I slid the thermal paper printout over. Janelle picked it up. She studied the batch header, the IP address, and the timestamp. She didn't gasp. She didn't frown. She just nodded, a small, tight movement of validation. "This is not a prank," she said, her voice cool. "This is a hostile adverse possession strategy. They tried to bully you physically. When that failed, they tried to encumber the title digitally." "What do we do?" I asked. Janelle set the paper down and laced her fingers together. "We attack, but we do not attack with anger. We attack with procedure. We are going to file 3 things before the courthouse closes today." She held up one finger. "First, a quiet title action. This asks the court to definitively declare that you are the sole owner and that this trust is a fiction. It forces them to come to court and prove the trust exists, which they can't, because it doesn't." She held up a second finger. "Second, an emergency temporary restraining order, a TRO. We will cite the harassment, the trespassing, and the fraudulent filing. We will ask the judge to bar Sloan Mercer and Marcus Felton from coming within 500 feet of the property or communicating with you regarding the asset." "Marcus too?" I asked. The name stuck in my throat. "Especially Marcus." Janelle said, "His email is on the submission. He is the submitter. He is the danger." She held up a third finger. "Third, and this is the most important one, we are going to file a motion for the preservation of electronic evidence. We are going to subpoena the e-recording vendor for the full metadata package of that upload." "I have the printout," I said. "You have the receipt," Janelle corrected. "I want the digital footprint. I want to know what device was used. I want to know the browser fingerprint. I want to know if the file was created in Microsoft Word or Adobe, and who the licensed user of that software was. Metadata never lies. People lie. Metadata just waits to be read. She looked at me. Amanda, this is going to be expensive. And it is going to be ugly. They are going to say you are hysterical. They are going to say it was a misunderstanding. They are going to say you are ruining the family. The family ruined itself when they tried to steal my house, I said. Janelle smiled. It was the first time she had smiled. It was terrifying. Good answer. Now, I need you to do something for me. You work in compliance, right? Yes. Go back to your hotel or your house. Do not answer your phone. Do not text your husband. Create a matrix. I want a spreadsheet. Column A time. Column B, action. Column C, evidence. Link every text message, every voicemail, every photo, every document to a specific timestamp. Make it look like a forensic audit. Can you do that? That is what I do for a living, I said. Good. Send it to me by 5 o'clock. I will have the filings ready for your signature via secure email. I left her office feeling lighter. I didn't feel happy, but I felt armed. I had traded my confusion for a weapon. I drove back to Harbor Crest Dunes. The guard at the gate nodded to me as I passed. He knew who I was now. I was the woman who didn't blink. Inside the house, I didn't unpack. I set up my laptop on the kitchen island. I treated the space not as a home, but as a command center. I opened a blank spreadsheet. Timeline of events, Incident 24-009. I worked for 4 hours. I downloaded the video clips from the doorbell camera. I exported the text conversation with Sloan. I scanned the notice of violation Rojas had given me. I linked everything. It was a beautiful, terrible mosaic of betrayal. At 4:30, my phone chimed. It was an email from Janelle. Subject urgent. Metadata preliminary report. I opened it. Janelle had connections. She had managed to get an informal look-see from a contact at the digital forensics firm they used. Based on the IP address I had provided from the county clerk, Amanda. The email read, "We ran the IP and the device signature from the rejected submission log. See attached." I opened the attachment. It was a PDF with lines of code and technical jargon. But Janelle had highlighted the relevant parts in yellow. IP address, origin 192.168.x.x, the Hive co-working space, downtown branch. My stomach tightened. Sloan used the Hive. She filmed her podcast there. She had a dedicated desk. But then I looked at the next line. Device user agent MacBook Pro / macOS 14.2 / user profile Marcus_Air_primary / iCloud sync ID. Redacted string ending in 4492. I stopped breathing. Marcus_Air_primary. It wasn't just Marcus's email. It was Marcus's laptop. But the IP address was at Sloan's office. I sat back. The cold of the kitchen stool seeping into my spine. The pieces clicked together with the deafening sound of a vault door closing. Marcus wasn't at home when the file was uploaded. He wasn't clearing spam from his study. The device was at the Hive. Either Marcus was with Sloan at 11:14 at night, plotting this together, or he had given her his laptop and his passwords to do the dirty work for him. I looked at the timestamps again. 11:14 p.m., upload attempted. 11:15 p.m., rejection error generated due to the county batch processing delay. 11:17 p.m., text from Marcus to me. Hope you're settling in. Let me know if you need anything. He had texted me 3 minutes after the upload failed. He was checking to see if I had noticed. He was checking the temperature. I felt a wave of nausea, followed instantly by a wave of pure, distilled rage. It wasn't the heat of anger. It was the absolute zero of indifference. I picked up my phone to call Janelle. I have the email, I said when she answered. I see the device ID. It links to him, Janelle said. Her voice was flat, professional. It links to his personal hardware. That establishes intent. It establishes conspiracy. He texted me 3 minutes later, I said. He was checking if the trap had snapped shut. Do not call him, Janelle ordered. Amanda, listen to me closely. Do not call him. Do not ask him why. Do not scream at him. If you confront him now, He will scrub the device. He will delete the logs. He will claim he was hacked. I want him to know I know, I whispered. No, Janelle said. You want him to be served. You want a sheriff's deputy to hand him a court order while he's drinking his morning coffee. That is how we win. We don't fight with words. Words are air. We fight with paper. Paper is weight. Okay, I said. File it. File everything. It's already done, Janelle said. The judge is reviewing the TRO request within the hour. By tonight, they will be legally barred from touching that house. By tomorrow, they will be defending themselves against a fraud allegation. I hung up. I looked at the laptop screen. I looked at the spreadsheet I had built. Column A, 2:00 p.m. Phone call. Column B, Sloan demands entry. I realized then that I had been looking at it all wrong. I thought the drama was about the beach house. I thought Sloan just wanted a vacation. I deleted the row. I typed a new entry at the top of the sheet. Pre-incident planning. The phone call wasn't the beginning. The phone call was the distraction. Sloan was the magician's left hand, waving a colorful scarf, making noise, drawing the eye. Marcus was the right hand, quietly sliding the card into the deck, trying to steal the trick. They thought I was the audience. They thought I would clap, or cry, or just sit there and accept the illusion. I closed the laptop. The screen went black, reflecting my own face. I didn't look tired anymore. I looked like someone who was done watching the show. I was about to tear down the whole theater. The temporary restraining order arrived via secure email at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was a beautiful document, dense with legal citations and signed by a judge who clearly had no patience for family drama interfering with property rights. The order explicitly barred Sloan Mercer, Marcus Felton, and any agents acting on their behalf from coming within 500 feet of my residence or contacting me through any means other than legal counsel. I forwarded the PDF immediately to Kendra Shaw at Cedarline Community Services. 4 minutes later, I received a confirmation. The guard at the main gate now had a physical list of names and license plate numbers. The invisible wall I had built around my life had just been reinforced with steel. For the first hour, the silence in the house felt like a victory. I brewed coffee. I watched the ocean churn against the shore. I allowed myself to believe that the war was confined to courthouses and lawyers' offices. Then my phone vibrated. It was a notification from an old college friend I had not spoken to in 3 years. Amanda, are you okay? I just saw Sloan's TikTok. My stomach dropped. I had forgotten that while I fought with paper, Sloan fought with pixels. I opened the app. There it was. Sloan had posted a video 30 minutes ago. It was already viral. The video was a masterpiece of manipulation. She had used a black and white filter that softened her features and made her look fragile. Soft, melancholic piano music played in the background. The clip was a frantic montage of her standing on the side of a dark road, wiping away tears, looking lost and abandoned. "My own sister," she sobbed into the camera, her voice trembling perfectly. "We drove 2 hours to surprise her. We just wanted to celebrate her new home. She threw us out. She called the police on her own family. I am stranded in the middle of nowhere. I don't know what I did to deserve this cruelty." The caption read, "When money changes people. Heartbroken family trauma toxic." I scrolled to the comments. They were scrolling by so fast I could barely read them. "Your sister is a monster. Who calls the cops on family? Drop the address. We just want to talk to her. Eat the rich." Thousands of strangers were dissecting my character based on 60 seconds of performance art. They were calling for my job. They were doxing my old address in the city. They were painting me as the villain in a narrative I had not even realized was being filmed. My instinct was to scream. My instinct was to create my own account, to post the deed, to explain that she had demanded the master bedroom and brought a film crew without permission. I wanted to defend myself, but I froze. I remembered Janelle's voice. "We fight with paper." Responding was what Sloan wanted. She wanted a public feud. She wanted engagement. Every comment I made would just boost the algorithm, pushing her video onto more screens, making her more famous, making the lie bigger. I put the phone down on the counter. I took a deep breath. I did not comment. I did not like the video. I did not report it to the platform. Instead, I took a screen recording of the entire video. I took screenshots of the most violent comments, specifically the ones threatening my safety. I exported the file. I drafted an email to Janelle and the investigating officer at the sheriff's department. Subject: evidence of violation of TRO. Incitement and defamation. Body: the defendant, Sloan Mercer, is currently utilizing social media to incite harassment against the protected party and the property. Please see the attached documentation of threats generated by her falsified narrative. This violates the non-disparagement clause implicit in the civil complaint. I hit send. The response from the real world was swifter than the internet. The Harborcrest HOA board did not watch TikTok for entertainment. They watched it for liability. An hour later, an email blast went out to all residents of Harborcrest Dunes. It was titled, "Community Alert: Unauthorized Commercial Filming and Harassment Policy." It stated that the board had identified a security breach involving unauthorized media production and was implementing a zero-tolerance policy. Any guest found filming on community grounds without a permit would be immediately escorted out and the homeowner fined $2,000. The email didn't name Sloan, but it didn't have to. The community was closing ranks. They didn't want influencers in their driveways. They wanted peace. But the internet was still burning. The comments on Sloan's video were getting uglier. I felt a wave of despair. The truth didn't matter if the lie was louder. And then, the narrative broke. It came from a direction neither Sloan nor I expected. It came from the van. One of the guys Sloan had brought along, a freelance videographer named Tyler. According to his handle, had apparently realized that being associated with a viral hate campaign against a corporate compliance officer with an aggressive lawyer was a bad career move. He was scared. He wanted to distance himself. So he posted his own video. It wasn't edited. It wasn't filtered. It was raw footage from his camera. Time-stamped from the moment they arrived at my driveway, the caption simply read, "I am not getting sued for this." Here is what actually happened. I watched it, mesmerized. The video showed Sloan standing on my porch before I opened the door. The audio was crystal clear. "She better have the wine ready." Sloan's voice cut through the speakers, shrill and demanding. "I told her I want the master suite. She can sleep on the couch. It's fine. She's used to it. Just make sure you don't film the small bedroom. I don't want people thinking we stayed in the guest room." The camera panned to one of the other friends. "Is she cool with us bringing 12 people?" "Who cares?" Sloan snapped in the video. "It's my house, basically. Marcus paid for half of it anyway. He just put it in her name for tax reasons. Just don't embarrass me. If she acts weird. We cut it out in post." The video cut to the moment Rojas, the security guard, handed her the notice. It showed her screaming. It showed her calling me a bitch. It showed her trying to bully the police officer. It showed the truth. The internet is a fickle beast. It loves a victim, but it loves an exposed liar even more. Within 2 hours, Tyler's video had twice the views of Sloan's. The comments on Sloan's page stopped being supportive and started being vicious. You demanded the master suite in her own house. You tried to make her sleep on the couch. LMAO, not the tax reasons lie. Team Amanda. Sloan panicked. I watched in real time as she deleted her crying video. Then she deleted the comments. Then she went private. Then, 10 minutes later, she went public again with a new video, sitting in a hotel room, looking angry instead of sad. "You guys don't understand the context," she yelled at the camera. "It's a family joke. We always swap rooms." She manipulated the footage. But she couldn't control the tide. The raw footage was everywhere. People were stitching it, remixing it, dissecting her entitlement. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the nightmare sister. I closed the app. I felt a strange, cold satisfaction. I hadn't said a word. I hadn't engaged in a single argument. I had simply let her own behavior be her undoing. But the cornered animal bites back. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a new notification popped up on my laptop. It was an email to my personal address. The sender was anonymous user 7721 at protonmail.com. The subject line was blank. I opened it. The message was one line. Typed in bold. Drop the lawsuit and the fraud claim or you lose your husband. Marcus goes down. You go down. Think about your reputation. My hands went cold. This wasn't internet hate. This was knowledge. The sender knew about the fraud claim. The fraud claim I had filed at the county clerk's office less than 8 hours ago. The fraud claim that only Janelle, the county clerk, the title company, and the perpetrator knew about. Sloan didn't know the technical details of the filing. She was too busy fighting on TikTok. This was Marcus, or it was someone Marcus had told. It was a threat disguised as advice. It was telling me that if I exposed the fake trust, if I exposed the fraudulent recording, I would be destroying his career and, by extension, my own financial stability. It was the classic abuser's logic, don't hit me back, or we both get hurt. I stared at the screen. You lose your husband. I had already lost him. I lost him the moment he emailed a fake deed to the county recorder while I was sleeping. I lost him the moment he sent his sister to invade my sanctuary. I took a screenshot of the email. I printed it to PDF, including the full header information. I sent it to Janelle. Janelle, I wrote, receive this threat at 4:12 p.m. The sender has knowledge of the specific fraud filing which is not public record yet. This confirms the adverse party is monitoring the legal status of the property. Please add this to the harassment complaint and forward to the district attorney as witness intimidation. Janelle replied in 30 seconds. Received. We are adding a criminal referral for extortion. Do not reply. I didn't reply. I just filed the email in the folder marked Harbor Crest Evidence. The sun began to set. The shadows in the house grew long and sharp. I walked to the living room window. A black sedan with tinted windows was driving slowly past the house. It slowed down as it reached my driveway. It didn't stop, but it crawled at a walking pace. I couldn't see the driver. It drove to the end of the cul-de-sac, turned around, and came back. It passed the house again. It was an intimidation tactic. It was meant to make me feel watched. It was meant to remind me that a piece of paper couldn't stop a brick from coming through a window. I didn't hide. I didn't close the blinds. I stood right in the center of the window, visible in the glow of the setting sun. I picked up my phone and dialed the security dispatch number. This is 44 Dune Grass Way, I said. I have a suspicious vehicle loitering. Black sedan, no front plate. It is making repeated passes. We see it on the street camera. Ms. Price, the dispatcher said. Patrol is 30 seconds away. I watched as the white security interceptor turned the corner. It didn't use sirens. It just accelerated smoothly, pulling diagonally across the road to block the sedan's path. The black sedan braked hard. The security officer stepped out, hand on his belt, bright spotlight hitting the driver's windshield. I didn't need to go outside. I didn't need to hear the conversation. I saw the sedan reverse, turn sharply, and speed away toward the exit gate. The security officer spoke into his radio, then looked up at my window. He gave a single, crisp nod. I nodded back. I turned away from the window and looked at my kitchen. The binder was there. The laptop was there. The silence was there. I had always thought revenge was loud. I thought it was screaming matches and thrown vases. I thought it was slashing tires or burning letters. But this absolute, hermetically sealed control was so much more devastating. Sloan was self-destructing on the internet. Marcus was sweating in his office, sending anonymous threats because he was terrified of a paper trail he couldn't delete. And I was just sitting here, drinking tea, letting the system chew them up. I realized then that the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is litigation, and I was very, very good at it. I opened a new tab on my browser. I wasn't looking for lawyers anymore. I was looking for a forensic accountant. If Marcus was worried about his reputation, I needed to know exactly what he was hiding in those consulting accounts. The threat said, Marcus goes down. You go down. I typed the search query for asset tracing specialists. No, Marcus would go down. I would be the one holding the shovel. I arranged to meet Marcus not at the beach house, which was now a fortress of evidence, and not at our apartment in the city, which was a minefield of memories. I rented a small, soundproof conference pod at a co-working space in a town halfway between the two. It was neutral ground. It was sterile. It had glass walls but no audio recording, and I pulled the frosted privacy screen across the door as soon as he walked in. Marcus looked tired. That was his first weapon. He wore a wrinkled button-down shirt, and his hair was slightly messy, a carefully cultivated look of the overworked, misunderstood provider. He carried 2 coffees, offering me one with a sheepish, boyish smile that had worked on me for 12 years. "Mandy," he said, using the nickname I had stopped liking 5 years ago. "I am so glad you agreed to talk. This whole thing with Sloan has gotten completely out of hand. I told her she was crazy to drive down there." I didn't take the coffee. I didn't smile. I sat on the ergonomic chair on the opposite side of the small white table and placed 2 pieces of paper between us. One was the printout of the metadata from the county clerk's office. The other was the threat email I had received yesterday. "Sit down, Marcus," I said. He sat, but he didn't look at the papers. He looked at me, his eyes wide and pleading. "Babe, honestly, I don't know what she told you, but I have been trying to manage her. You know how she gets. She called me screaming that you had her arrested. I was just trying to calm everyone down." "Stop," I said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. I pointed to the paper on the left. "This is a transaction log from the Wexley County Recorder of Deeds. It shows an attempted upload of a fraudulent document titled Correction of Interest at 11:14 at night on Tuesday." Marcus froze. The concerned husband mask didn't fall off. It just stiffened, like plaster drying too fast. "And this," I pointed to the second line on the sheet, "is the digital fingerprint. It shows the file was uploaded from a device named Marcus_Air_primary. That is your laptop, the one you sync to our home network, the one you swore was just for client work." Marcus looked at the paper. He didn't touch it. "Amanda, you're being paranoid. Sloan probably guessed my password. You know she's hacked into my Netflix before. She must have—" "Sloan doesn't know what a grantor retained annuity trust is," I interrupted. "Sloan thinks escrow is a type of soup. The document that was uploaded was a sophisticated legal instrument. It referenced specific tax codes. It used the correct parcel identifier for this county." I leaned forward. "Sloan didn't write that. Marcus, you did." He opened his mouth to deny it again, but I cut him off. "I have already filed a fraud affidavit. I have a forensic hold on the metadata. If you lie to me right now, in this room, I will walk out that door and I will let the district attorney finish this conversation for me. So I will ask you once, why is your email address on a fake deed trying to steal my house?" Marcus slumped. The physical collapse was sudden. His shoulders dropped. His face went slack, and the boyish charm evaporated, leaving behind a terrified, aging man. "It wasn't stealing," he whispered. "It was protecting." "Protecting what?" "Us," he said. He looked up, and his eyes were wet. "I just wanted everyone to be okay. Sloan said she would ruin us. She said she would tell you everything." "Tell me what—" He rubbed his face with both hands. "I made a bad call. Amanda, last year, the consulting firm I took a leverage position on a tech merger. It was supposed to be a sure thing, inside info. It wasn't. I felt a cold stone settle in my stomach. "How much, Marcus?" He didn't answer. "How much?" I repeated. $250,000, he mumbled. "I borrowed it against the receivables, but the merger fell through. The lenders, they aren't banks. They are aggressive." I stared at him. My husband. The man who scrutinized my grocery receipts to make sure I wasn't overspending on organic produce. Had gambled $250,000 of leverage debt and lost it. "Sloan found out," he continued. "She was at the office one day when a collection guy came by. She heard everything. She recorded it. The pieces of the puzzle slammed together so hard I almost flinched. So she blackmailed you, I said. She offered a deal, Marcus corrected, as if the semantics mattered. She said she needed a venue. She needed the beach house to launch her new lifestyle series. She said if I got her access, if I made sure she had rights to the property so you couldn't kick her out, she would give me $50,000 from her sponsorship deal to cover the interest payments, and she promised not to tell you about the debt. I looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time in years. I saw a weak man, a man who was so terrified of his wife finding out he wasn't perfect that he conspired with her sister to rob her. So you wrote the fake trust, I said. I drafted a memo, he stammered. I just wanted to give her something to show the HOA. I didn't think she would actually try to file it. I thought it was just for show, to get her in the gate. You uploaded it, Marcus? I said. The timestamp is 11:14. Sloane was at my door at 7. She was already gone. You tried to record it 4 hours later. He looked away. I thought if it was official, if it was on the books, then you couldn't be angry at her. You would just have to accept it. You follow rules. Amanda, if the rule said she had a right to be there, you would let her stay. I just wanted peace. I wanted her off my back, and I wanted you to not ask questions. You wanted me compliant, I said. You used my adherence to the law against me. You weaponized my own integrity. I did it for the family, he snapped, his voice rising for the first time. I am drowning. Amanda, I am drowning in debt, and you are buying a beach house with your bonus money. Do you know how that feels? To watch you succeed while I am sinking. So you decided to sink me too. I was going to fix it, he insisted. Once the deal cleared, I would have removed the trust. It was temporary, just until I paid off the loan. I stood up, I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. I felt sick, but it was a distant, clinical nausea. There is one thing I need to know, I said, keeping my back to him. Anything, he said. I'll tell you anything. I turned around. The closing documents, the specific deed references, the title policy number. Sloane had a copy of the deed header. She had the exact parcel number format, even though she forged the rest. She couldn't have gotten that from a public search that quickly. I looked him in the eye. Did you give her my closing file? Marcus swallowed hard. She needed the details to make the pass look real. Did you sign the forgery? I asked. The document she showed the police, the one with the fake notary stamp. Did you sign it? He hesitated. Marcus, I said. Did you sign it? I signed a blank page, he whispered. She said she would fill in the rest. I just signed the bottom. Did you sign it? Or did you just open the door for her? I asked. Because giving her the key is bad, but signing your name on the weapon, that is intent. He didn't answer. The silence stretched out, filling the small room, suffocating the last gasps of our marriage. He had signed it. He had put his name on a lie to save his own skin. I picked up the papers from the table. I put them back in my folder. Amanda, please, he said, standing up. We can fix this. I can sell the boat. I can liquidate my IRA. We can pay off the debt. Just don't file the fraud claim. If you file that, I lose my license. I lose the firm. You lost the firm when you borrowed $200,000 from loan sharks, I said. And you lost me when you decided that betraying me was cheaper than telling me the truth. But the post-nup, he blurted out, the agreement, it says we handle debt separately, but assets are shared if we cohabit. I stopped at the door. I looked at him with genuine confusion. What post-nup, Marcus? The one we discussed 5 years ago when I started the firm. Discussed, I said. We discussed it. You sent me a draft. I sent it back with red lines. You never sent a final version. We never signed it. His face went pale. No, we did. It's in the safe. It's not, I said. I checked the safe before I came here. There is no agreement. There never was. You just kept acting like there was one. You kept saying, per our agreement, whenever we talked about money. And I was so busy working, I just assumed you had filed it. But you didn't. Just like you didn't file your taxes on time last year. Just like you didn't file the trust correctly. I opened the door. You are not just a liar. Marcus, you are incompetent. Amanda, he shouted, moving toward me. I held up a hand. Stay there. If you follow me, I will call the police and report a violation of the restraining order. You can't do this, he pleaded. I am your husband. No, I said. You are a counterparty. I walked out. I didn't run. I walked at a steady, measured pace to my car. I got in, locked the doors, and drove 2 blocks before I pulled over into a gas station to vomit. I wiped my mouth, rinsed it with water from a bottle, and picked up my phone. I dialed Janelle. It's done, I said. He admitted it. He admitted the debt. He admitted conspiring with Sloan. He admitted giving her the closing file. Did you record it? Janelle asked. No, I said. The room was clean, but I don't need the recording. I have the sequence. What is the next step? Janelle asked. Emergency financial separation. I said. I want a freeze on all joint accounts immediately. I want to list pendants on the city apartment. And Janelle. Yes. Add a cause of action for third-party inducement of breach. He didn't just defraud me. He incentivized Sloan to harass me. He paid her or promised to pay her to breach my peace. That is aggressive, Janelle said. I like it. And one more thing, I said. He thinks there is a post-nuptial agreement. He is relying on it, but it doesn't exist. Verify that with his counsel. Force them to produce it. When they can't, use that failure to prove a pattern of gaslighting regarding financial controls. Understood. Are you safe? I am going back to the house, I said. I am changing the locks. Again. I hung up. I sat in the car for a moment, looking at the contact entry for Marcus. Hubby on my phone. The photo was of us in Napa. 3 years ago. We looked happy. We looked like a team. I hit edit. I deleted the photo. I changed the name to Marcus Felton. Then I opened my banking app. I changed the password. I opened my email. I changed the password. I opened the smart home app and revoked his admin access permanently. I was stripping him out of my digital life, bite by bite. It didn't feel like a divorce. It felt like a quarantine. I wasn't just leaving a marriage. I was containing a biological hazard. I put the car in drive and headed back toward the ocean. The sun was high and bright. But the world looked different now. It was sharper, clearer. I used to think my family was a safety net. Now I knew the truth. They were just people who knew exactly where to stick the knife because they had helped me try on the armor. But they forgot one thing. I bought the armor, and I kept the receipt. Courtroom 4B did not smell like the ocean. It smelled of floor polish, recycled air, and the quiet, desperate sweat of people watching their lives being dismantled by strangers. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands folded on top of a pristine file folder. To my right, Janelle Sutter arranged her exhibits with the terrifying precision of a bomb disposal technician. Across the aisle, Sloan sat next to a court-appointed public defender who looked like he had met her 5 minutes ago and already regretted it. She was dressed in a soft pastel cardigan and a floral dress, a costume designed to scream harmless suburban sister. She wasn't wearing her signature heavy makeup. She was playing the role of the confused victim, the loving sibling who had just wanted a family reunion. Marcus sat 2 rows behind her in the gallery. He was not a party to the restraining order hearing against Sloan, but his presence hung over the room like a gas leak. He wore his navy suit, the one he wore for big client meetings, but it hung loosely on his frame. He wouldn't look at me. He stared fixedly at the back of the bailiff's head. "All rise," the bailiff intoned. The Honorable Justice Halloway entered. She was a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a face that suggested she had heard every lie ever invented by humanity and found them all boring. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the docket. "Matter of Price versus Mercer," she read. "Request for permanent injunctive relief. Ms. Sutter, proceed. Janelle didn't waste time with an opening statement about feelings. She stood up and walked to the podium. Your Honor, this is not a domestic dispute, Janelle began, her voice crisp. This is a case of trespassing, harassment, and attempted title fraud. We are asking the court to convert the temporary restraining order into a permanent injunction barring Ms. Mercer from the plaintiff's property and workplace. Janelle signaled to the clerk. Exhibit A, body camera footage from the Wexley County Sheriff's Department, dated Tuesday the 31st. The large monitor on the wall flickered to life. The audio was tinny but distinct. You liar, you told them I was trespassing, Sloane's voice filled the courtroom. On screen. Her face was contorted with rage. Illuminated by the harsh blue police lights, she looked nothing like the pastel-clad woman sitting at the defense table. The contrast was violent. I have a contract. My brother-in-law signed it. Janelle paused the video right at the moment Sloane thrust the forged document at the deputy. Exhibit B, Janelle said. The document in question, a grantor retained annuity trust authorization. Notarized with a fraudulent stamp, the notary commission number belongs to a woman who died in 2022. A murmur went through the room. Judge Holloway looked at the document, then at Sloane. Ms. Mercer, the judge said, did you present this document to law enforcement? Sloane stood up. She gripped the table. Her eyes welled with tears on command. Your Honor, I didn't know. My brother-in-law gave it to me. I just wanted to see my sister. I thought we had an arrangement. She's been under so much stress lately. I think she's having a breakdown. I was just trying to help her. I asked if you presented the document, the judge repeated, her voice dropping a degree in temperature. I did not ask for a diagnosis of the plaintiff's mental health. I need documents, Ms. Mercer, not content. Sloane flinched. She looked at her lawyer, who stared resolutely at his notepad. I presented it, Sloane whispered. But I didn't make it. Exhibit C, Janelle cut in. She put a new graphic on the screen. It was the metadata report from the county recorder's office. This is the digital log of an attempted deed amendment filed 4 hours after that body cam footage was taken, Janelle said. It was uploaded from an IP address located at The Hive, a co-working space where Ms. Mercer rents a desk. However, the device used to upload it was a MacBook Pro registered to Marcus_Air_primary. Janelle turned and pointed directly at Marcus in the gallery. That device belongs to Marcus Felton, the plaintiff's husband and the defendant's alleged co-conspirator. Marcus jerked in his seat. The judge followed Janelle's finger. Mr. Felton, Judge Holloway said, please approach the bench. Marcus stood up. He smoothed his tie, but his hands were shaking. He walked through the swinging gate and stood before the judge. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. Mr. Felton, are you represented by counsel today? No, Your Honor, Marcus said, his voice cracking. I didn't think I'm just here to support the family. You are mentioned in the police report and linked to this digital evidence, the judge said. I am going to ask you one question. Did you authorize the use of your device at the Hive co-working space on the night of the 31st? Marcus looked at Sloane. She was glaring at him, her eyes wide and panicked. If he said yes, he admitted to conspiracy. If he said no, he threw her under the bus for theft of his device. I leave my laptop around sometimes, Marcus stammered. Sloane and we share resources. It's possible she borrowed it. He gave it to me, Sloane shrieked. The outburst was sudden and sharp. Sloane stood up, pointing at Marcus. He gave me the password. He told me to upload the file because he was too scared to do it from his own IP address. He said if I did it, he would pay off my credit card. Order, the bailiff shouted. He's lying, Sloane yelled, abandoning the victim act entirely. He's the one who wrote the fake trust. He's the one who owes money to the loan sharks. Ms. Mercer, sit down or you will be held in contempt. Judge Holloway slammed her gavel. Marcus looked at the floor. He didn't deny it. His silence was louder than Sloane's screaming. He had tried to play both sides, the supportive husband and the helpful brother-in-law, and now he was being crushed between them. The judge adjusted her robes. She looked at the three of us with an expression of profound distaste. "I have heard enough," she said. "The temporary restraining order is converted to a permanent injunction for a period of 5 years. Ms. Mercer, you are to have no contact with Ms. Price. You are to stay 500 feet away from her home, her vehicle, and her place of employment." She turned to the clerk. "Furthermore, I am impounding the exhibits regarding the fraudulent deed and the metadata logs. I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into forgery and title fraud. Mr. Felton, I suggest you retain criminal counsel immediately." The gavel came down. Bang! It sounded like a gunshot. I stood up. I didn't look at Marcus. I didn't look at Sloane. I walked out of the courtroom with Janelle, leaving them to the wreckage they had built. But the war wasn't over. The battlefield just shifted. 20 minutes later, I was standing in the corridor, checking my email, when a notification popped up from the HR director at Stonebridge Integrity Group. The subject line was simply "Urgent Compliance Complaint." My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened the email. "Amanda, we received a formal whistleblower complaint this morning alleging that you have been using company resources to harass a family member and that you are mentally unstable and unfit for your security clearance. The complaint demands your immediate suspension pending an investigation." It was Sloane. It was the nuclear option she had threatened years ago if I ever cut her off. She was trying to hit me where I lived my career, my reputation, my income. I looked at Janelle. She filed a complaint with my job. She told them I'm crazy. Janelle didn't blink. "Show me." I handed her the phone. "Good thing we prepared for this," Janelle said. I dialed the HR director. "This is Amanda Price. I am referencing the complaint you just received." "Amanda," the director said, her voice cautious, "you know I can't discuss an active investigation, but the allegations are serious. They claim you used Stonebridge software to spy on a private citizen." "The complainant is Sloane Mercer, correct?" I asked. There was a pause. "The complaint was anonymous." "It wasn't anonymous," I said. "It was retaliation. Please cross-reference the sender's email with the harassment notification I sent you yesterday. Case number 4922 regarding the active restraining order." "Hold on," the director said. I heard typing. I waited. The corridor was cold. I watched Marcus exit the courtroom alone, walking fast toward the elevators, his head down. He didn't see me. He was running from the ghost of his own career. "Okay," the director said, her voice changing. "I see your notification from yesterday. You warned us she might try this." "I did," I said, "and I would like to request that IT run a trace on the header of that anonymous email." "We already did," the director said. "Standard protocol for whistleblower complaints. The sender used a secure Proton Mail account, but they made a mistake. The recovery email address listed in the header is linked to mercer_media_bookings gmail.com. I closed my eyes and exhaled. Sloane was so used to operating in the world of social media, where you could make a fake account in 10 seconds, that she forgot how corporate forensic security worked. She had used her business email as the backup for her burner account. "That is the defendant in the restraining order I just secured," I said. "She is currently in violation of a court order by contacting my employer to harass me." "I see," the director said. The caution was gone from her voice, replaced by the steely tone of a corporate protector. "Amanda, this complaint is dismissed as malicious. Furthermore, our legal department will be drafting a cease and desist letter to Ms. Mercer regarding tortious interference with an employment contract. We don't take kindly to people trying to weaponize our ethics hotline." "Thank you," I said. I hung up. I looked at Janelle. She used her business email as the recovery address. Janelle let out a short, dry laugh. "Amateurs!" At that moment, the elevator doors opened and Sloane stepped out. She was with her public defender, but she stopped when she saw us. She looked at me. The mask was gone. There was no poor sister left. There was just hate. "You think you're so smart," she hissed, ignoring her lawyer's hand on her arm. You think because you have a fancy job you can step on me, I sent that email. Amanda, Stonebridge is going to fire you. They hate drama. I looked at her. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity. Just the boredom of watching a rerun. I just got off the phone with them, I said calmly. They traced the recovery email to your booking account. Their general counsel is drafting a suit against you for tortious interference. You didn't get me fired. Sloan, you just got yourself sued by a Fortune 500 company. Sloane's face went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at her lawyer, but he just shook his head and pressed the button for the elevator, distancing himself from her physically. And by the way, I added, the judge just signed the order referring the forgery to the DA. You might want to save that $50,000 you extorted from Marcus. You're going to need it for bail. The elevator arrived. The lawyer stepped in. Sloan stood there for a second, looking at me, looking at the empty hallway, looking at the ruin of her own making. Then she scrambled into the elevator as if the air in the corridor was toxic. The doors closed. I stood in silence with Janelle. The courthouse was quiet again. She thought she could win by being loud, I said. She thought if she made enough noise, I would fold. Janelle gathered her files. She snapped her briefcase shut. That is the mistake they always make, Janelle said, leaning in close so only I could hear. They think the court of public opinion matters. It doesn't. The end of this story won't be on social media. Amanda, the end is right here, in the basement of this building, where they store the files they can't delete. The end is where the timestamp lives forever. I nodded. I turned and walked toward the exit. I walked out into the bright, blinding sun of the afternoon. I was alone. My husband was gone. My sister was gone. My family was a crater, but as I walked to my car, I checked my phone. The security app for the beach house showed a live feed of the ocean. The waves were rolling in, steady and rhythmic. The house was empty. The house was quiet. And for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like ownership. The final hearing for the quiet title action was not a battle. It was an autopsy. The courtroom was almost empty, stripped of the chaotic energy that had filled it during the restraining order hearing. This was a procedural matter now, a hearing to determine the true ownership of 44 Dune Grass Way, but the air was heavy with the static charge of impending ruin. I sat next to Janelle Sutter. She looked serene. Her table was not covered in messy stacks of paper, but arranged with a single laptop connected to the court's projector system and 3 neatly bound binders. On the other side, Sloan sat alone. Her public defender was there, but he had pulled his chair a few inches away from her, a subtle physical cue that he knew his client was radioactive. Marcus was not at the defense table. He had been subpoenaed as a hostile witness and was sitting in the front row of the gallery, looking like a man who was trying to shrink until he disappeared entirely. Judge Holloway entered. She did not waste time with pleasantries. "We are here to resolve the cloud on the title of the property in question," she said. "The plaintiff alleges that the Felton Price Family Trust is a fraudulent entity and that the recorded document attempting to transfer interest is a forgery. Ms. Sutter, you may proceed." Janelle stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Your Honor," Janelle said, "we have already established that the defendant, Sloan Mercer, attempted to gain entry to the property using a document she claimed gave her residency rights. Today, we will prove that this document was not merely a misunderstanding, but a manufactured instrument of fraud created with the specific intent to deceive this court and the county recorder." Janelle tapped a key on her laptop. The main screen above the jury box lit up. "Exhibit D," Janelle announced. "This is the forensic report from the digital evidence seized from the e-recording vendor." The screen showed a timeline. It was a simple horizontal line with 3 distinct dots. "We previously identified that the fraudulent deed was uploaded from an IP address at the Hive co-working space," Janelle said. "However, the defense has argued that Ms. Mercer acted alone, stealing her brother-in-law's laptop to commit this act without his knowledge. The metadata tells a different story." Janelle expanded the first dot on the timeline. Timestamp 8:30 in the evening, she read. A Microsoft Word document titled trust_template_final.docx was created. The author tag in the software metadata is not Sloan Mercer. It is Marcus Felton. The device ID matches the desktop computer located in Mr. Felton's private home office, not his laptop, but his secure desktop. Marcus made a small, strangled sound in the gallery. He had thought we only had the laptop logs. He forgot that the cloud syncs everything. Janelle moved to the second dot. Timestamp 9:15 in the evening, she continued. The file was not emailed. It was transferred via AirDrop. The transfer log shows a direct file handoff from Marcus_desktop to Sloan_iPhone_14. The room went deadly silent. This is the smoking gun. Your Honor, Janelle said, her voice dropping to a register of pure steel. You cannot airdrop a file to someone who is not in the room. You cannot accidentally transfer a legal instrument to a phone that is not unlocked and accepting the transfer. At 9:15, Marcus Felton and Sloan Mercer were in the same room. He did not lose his laptop. He handed her the weapon. Sloan stared at the screen. Her mouth was slightly open. She looked from the screen to Marcus, her eyes wide with betrayal. She realized that his incompetence had just incriminated her. And finally, what Janelle said, clicking the third dot. 11:14 at night, the upload attempts from the Hive. The user account logged into the county portal was indeed Marcus Felton's, but the geolocation places the device at Sloan Mercer's workspace. They split the labor. He built the bomb. She carried it to the target. Janelle turned to the judge. This defeats the innocent spouse defense. This defeats the rogue sister defense. This was a conspiracy. The judge looked at Marcus. Her expression was one of profound disappointment. Mr. Felton, you are reminded that you are under oath. Do you dispute the digital forensic logs provided by the cloud service provider? Marcus stood up. He looked at me. I looked back at him. My face a mask of stone. I saw him searching for a lifeline, for a hint of the woman who used to smooth over his mistakes. He found only a plaintiff. No, Your Honor, Marcus whispered. I do not dispute it. Sit down, the judge snapped. Janelle wasn't done. We have one final witness regarding the document itself, Janelle said. The defense has claimed that even if the trust was unrecorded, it was a valid agreement signed by the parties. To disprove this, we call Mr. Arthur Henderson. The side door opened. A small, neat man with a briefcase walked in. He looked like exactly what he was, a mobile notary who took his job very seriously. He took the stand. He was sworn in. Mr. Henderson, Janelle said, please look at the document marked Exhibit B. Do you recognize the notary stamp at the bottom of page 4? Mr. Henderson put on a pair of thick reading glasses. He studied the paper for 3 seconds. I recognize the format, he said, but that is not my stamp. The commission number is close to mine, but 2 digits are transposed, and the signature that is not my signature. Did you meet with Amanda Price or Marcus Felton or Sloan Mercer on Tuesday the 31st? Janelle asked. I did not, Mr. Henderson said. He opened a thick black ledger he had brought with him. I keep a log of every single act I notarize. It is required by state law. On Tuesday the 31st, I was in the hospital visiting my granddaughter. I performed no notarizations that day. My seal was in a locked safe in my office. So this document, Janelle said, pointing to the screen, is a total fabrication. It is a forgery. Mr. Henderson said firmly, and a poor one at that. Sloan sank lower in her chair. The public defender closed his file. There was nothing left to defend. The paper trail had turned into a cage. Judge Holloway cleared her throat. She didn't need to deliberate. The facts were not just clear. They were overwhelming. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, she ruled. Her voice was swift and decisive. The document titled Felton Price Family Trust is hereby declared void ab initio. It is a fraudulent instrument with no legal standing. The title to the property at 44 Dune Grass Way is quieted solely in the name of Amanda Price. She turned her gaze to the defense table. Ms. Mercer, your conduct in this matter goes beyond a family dispute. You participated in the creation and use of a forged legal instrument to dispossess a homeowner. You utilized electronic networks to file false claims. This court is issuing a permanent injunction barring you from the property for life. Furthermore, due to the testimony regarding the forgery and the digital conspiracy, I am referring this entire evidentiary record to the District Attorney's Office for potential charges of forgery, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. Sloane stood up. Panic had finally overridden her vanity. But I didn't make the stamp, she cried out. She looked around the room, searching for a camera, for an audience she could charm or manipulate. I just wanted to make a video. It was just content. You can't send me to jail for content. This is a courtroom, Ms. Mercer, Judge Holloway said, her voice cutting through the hysteria. There are no followers here. There are only laws, and you have broken them. The gavel came down. Court is adjourned. The reality of the room shifted instantly. The bailiff moved toward Sloane, not to arrest her yet, but to ensure she didn't approach me. Sloane stood frozen. She looked at the empty jury box. She looked at the wood paneling. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that she was in a place that could not be edited. She couldn't delete the judge's words. She couldn't put a filter on the transcript. Janelle packed up her laptop. Clean sweep, she murmured to me. The D.A. will pick this up by Monday. I stood up. I felt light. I felt clean. I walked toward the exit. As I passed the gallery, Marcus stepped into the aisle. He looked wrecked. His tie was loosened, and his eyes were red. Amanda, he said. He didn't reach out for me, he knew better, but he stood in my path. I was scared. You have to understand. The debt the guys I borrowed from, they threatened to call you. I panicked. I just wanted to buy time. I stopped. I looked at the man I had shared a bed with for 12 years. I looked at the man I had trusted with my life, who had sold me out for a temporary reprieve from his own mistakes. You didn't buy time. Marcus, I said, you bought an accomplice. I am going to lose everything, he said, his voice trembling. The license, the firm, if they charge me with fraud. You should have thought about that before you clicked send, I said. Please, he whispered, I'm your husband. You are a liability, I said, and I have just liquidated you. I walked past him. I didn't look back. I heard him sob, a sharp, pathetic sound that echoed in the high-ceilinged hallway, but it didn't slow my step. I walked out the double doors of the courthouse. The sun was blinding. Sloane was ahead of me. She had hurried out. Trying to escape the suffocation of the courtroom, she was standing on the sidewalk, holding her phone up, trying to find an angle that made the courthouse look like a backdrop for a Fighting for Justice vlog. She was desperate to control the narrative before the public record destroyed it. Guys, you won't believe the corruption I just witnessed, she was saying into her screen, her voice shrill. The judge was totally biased. She stopped mid-sentence. 2 men in cheap suits were standing in front of her. One of them held up a badge. It wasn't the sheriff's department. It was the district attorney's investigative unit. I stopped at the top of the stairs and watched. Sloane Mercer, the investigator asked, we need you to come with us to answer some questions regarding a forged instrument and the metadata logs from the Wexley County recorder. I can't, Sloane stammered, lowering her phone. I have a live stream scheduled at 4. You can reschedule, the man said, reaching for her arm. This isn't a request. Sloane looked up. She saw me standing at the top of the stairs. For a second, our eyes met. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked small. She looked like a child who had realized the game was over and she was the only one who didn't know the rules. She got into the back of the unmarked sedan. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. The door closed, cutting off her connection to the world she thought she owned. I walked to my car. I got in and drove. I didn't drive back to the city. I drove south, toward the salt and the wind. An hour later, I pulled into the driveway of 44 Dune Grass Way. The gate arm lifted automatically as my tag scanned. The security guard gave me a wave. The streets were quiet. I parked the car. I walked up the steps. I keyed in the code, my code, the only code. The house was cool and dim. The light was golden, reflecting off the ocean and dancing on the ceiling. I walked to the kitchen. The counter was clear. The binder of evidence was gone. The laptop was closed. There were no voices. There were no cameras. There were no lies. I opened the sliding glass door and stepped out onto the deck. The ocean roared, a massive, chaotic sound that drowned out everything else. It was loud, but it was a natural loudness. It was honest noise. I pulled a chair to the edge of the railing and sat down. I watched a pelican dive into the gray water. I thought about Marcus, sitting in a lawyer's office, trying to explain why his desktop computer was a crime scene. I thought about Sloane, sitting in an interrogation room, realizing that a notary logbook is more powerful than 1,000,000 followers. They had tried to invade my peace because they thought peace was passive. They thought peace was something you could take from someone who was too polite to fight back. They were wrong. Peace is not the absence of noise. Peace is the presence of walls that you build yourself. Peace is the knowledge that the locks work, the law is watching, and that no one, absolutely no one, has the right to walk through your door unless you invite them. I took a deep breath of the salty air. It tasted like victory. It tasted like silence. I closed my eyes and listened to the waves. For the first time in my life, the house didn't just belong to me. I belonged to the house, and we were both, finally, untouchable. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop your location in the comments below so we can connect. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Juliet Revenge Stories, hit the like button, and press the hype button to help this video reach more people.